Greetings and welcome to the Pransform podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Anastasio, here today with our special guest, Michael Leaf. This is season 2, episode 2, and the date is November 13th, 2024. And so, Michael, first of all, super excited to have you on the episode with us and joining us today. This is a podcast that we ran for an entire season, audio only and pretty much single person, and now we've moved into this video guest format, and super excited about that and having you be the first person to be part of that from outside our organization. So what I wanted to start with, Michael, was just some brief background on yourself, on Reconciled. Just tell us a little bit about how you got to where you were with starting the company and what the company is all about.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, and happy to be that first video guest of yours, which is awesome. Feel flattered. Reconciled started back in as an idea back in 2015. I was doing fractional CFO work on my own in Burlington, Vermont, where I live, and advising startups and small businesses in Vermont and throughout the country. And every time I went into a business, the books were terrible. They were a mess. And typical story of business owner is having somebody trusted but not trained to handle the books. That means the books really weren't put together, and they're not sophisticated, and they don't really have any, most small businesses, don't have anybody trained to do bookkeeping or accounting work that would be helpful for a growing business. So I decided to launch Reconciled. That's an experiment in 2015, and then officially made it a business in 2016. So basically have spent the past 8.5, 9 years running Reconciled, and now we're a national firm with a national presence, a great brand online, and helping hundreds and hundreds of small businesses throughout the U.S.
Outstanding. So you're coming up on, well, in a sense, a 10-year anniversary, so that's super exciting as well. So, Michael, just from the marketing perspective, it sounds like something that started like super organically for you in the very, very early stages. What was the general approach then and up to now in terms of like a marketing strategy that you employed to expand your business, to reach new customers? Was it primarily word of mouth initially? Did you use a lot of social media, things like that, that our audience might be interested in?
Yeah. So, the beginning of business, not just in services, but for any founder, is the challenge is always, okay, how do you get your first customers, right? And there's going to be a natural network that you have. And so because of like my outgoing nature and because of having lived in multiple places in the country, grew up in Arizona, lived in Seattle, early stage of my career, and then in Vermont now, having done that, I built a network, on a professional network and a personal network that was pretty big. So when I launched Reconciled, and when you launch anything, if your audience is listening to this, is you got to let everybody that knows know that you've done something, right? And more than just, I just want to announce I launched the business and just leave it there. No, you've got to remind people of what you've done and why. And so I really spent that first year focused on not just letting my friends and family and associates and professionals I've worked with in the past, anybody I did bookkeeping work for in the past, controller work for, CFO work, anybody I benefited on any level, this is your time to cash in on the currency you built with people. And hopefully you spent your life doing that in your career, doing that. So that's what I did. And that was super helpful to get those early customers. It also surprised me that I had launched a very simple website at the time. I built the website myself. The only domain we could afford at the time was reconciledit.com. So the name of the company originally was Reconciled It, not even Reconciled. I couldn't even afford reconciled.com. So I built a $99 website on my own through Wix or Weebly, and then we just started doing blog posts on there, sharing it on my LinkedIn, sharing it on my social media, and then and I started just making sure I got a chance to let everybody know that I ran across. So that was helpful, and that helped us build a base of customers that then let us experiment. But basically, from the second or third year of business till now, cold email outreach has been our king of lead generation. And The reason why I felt like it worked, there's a lot more firms that do it now, but at the time in 2016, 17, there weren't many firms doing cold email outreach. Now, who was?
Sure.
SaaS companies, other industry verticals, they were doing cold email outreach. But accounting firms were for sure not doing cold email outreach. And so I was trying to take the tactics that SaaS companies were already practicing. They've already been practicing basically since the 90s, right? When SaaS software had been around. I was like, well, I think I could take their practices. It works. It helps them grow recurring revenue and just put it into the accounting world. And so I've been one of the pioneers and a big proponent about cold email outreach and cold outreach in general and how to do it for firms. And that was a huge win for us on our growth. And probably the third thing is that I then got in the end of 2020, I got into acquisitions. So that was kind of the last pieces. I started doing acquisitions of smaller, more traditional firms and converting them into a modern firm like ours. So those are kind of the pieces that helped us grow.
Okay, no, that's outstanding. Super helpful and sort of comprehensive overview of how you traverse this period of time marketing wise. You mentioned a little while ago, Michael, about LinkedIn. Was that, from a social media perspective, was that the primary or even singular channel that you used on social media? Were there others that you incorporated, and was LinkedIn sort of the primary if there were others?
Yeah, LinkedIn has probably been the primary and one of the ones that I have the strongest and largest following on and built the largest following on because it is for professional use and I was able to leverage it very well. I haven't been very good at leveraging Facebook or Instagram or other platforms for professional use. I did last year start trying to leverage Instagram more for professional use and was able to grow an audience that way. But what I find, what I find now on social, even on LinkedIn, is that people follow individuals. They don't necessarily follow companies on LinkedIn. It's rare when I want to go look at a LinkedIn company page and look at their posts. I want to look at who are the personalities representing the company? Who's the face, right? So at your company, I would be like, I want to follow Christopher. I want to know what Chris is saying and what he's doing. Why? What's his why? What does he say the company's why? Does he align with that? Is he authentically presenting that in some way? That tells me the type of culture the business is. So, one thing I forgot to say on the marketing side, and it aligns with social media, is, when you start a professional service firm of any kind of service, and you want to try to do it at scale and grow nationally, there's this thing I call it the trust gap. I'm sure I'm not the first person who's ever thought of this, but I just said it's the trust gap. I've been in Burlington, Vermont, and I had to get somebody who's never met me, who just got a cold email from me or saw my website. I got to get them within a 30 to 45 minute video call to hand over the keys, financial keys to their business. Because in order to do accounting work, which is a unique service compared to law or others, is I got to get access to bank information, credit card information, personal identifiable information, employee information, stuff that can really be, if I use it wrong, if I don't use it with fiduciary protection, if I don't really protect it, it can really ruin somebody, right? So I had to figure out, how do I get through the trust gap, not being in their life physically or in their city. And so that took being as transparent as possible from the very beginning about who I was, why I was building Reconciled, what our brand values are, trying to be the type of person where, hey, you know what, like, if you were in my city or if I was in yours, we'd probably go have a drink together. We'd go out to a restaurant together. We'd spend time together. You'd hire me as a CFO. That's the trust gap I had to figure out how to fill within a 30 to 45 minute video call. And that's hard, right? So you learn that over time and you figure out, okay, what are the things that fill that gap and make it so that a Christopher who I've just met trusts me to now hand me over in the onboarding process, bank account access, credit card access. That's a big deal, right? And so that's that trust gap. So social was the same thing, where when we're leveraging social, I'm going, what can I use professionally to be very transparent about why I'm building Reconciled, and to bridge the trust gap, so that when someone goes and looks at my social profiles and sees me on there, it's as authentic as them meeting me in person. It's going to be the same person. It's not a fake presentation of me. It's who I am. And I needed to make sure those were aligned. And so for me, LinkedIn was the best on doing that. Because if you try to use like Facebook, Instagram, other platforms, a lot of that stuff for us, a lot of us, it has our family's photos, it has holidays and stuff like that. And that might not be the kind of thing that you want the world to definitely, you don't want the world necessarily to see or be exposed to. You want them to know, well, why are you running this business, and how are you going to solve my problem as a business owner? And so LinkedIn was really helpful for that, and helping us with the trust gap.
So Michael, that is immensely helpful, I think, for our audience to contemplate as they try to cover that same ground. I mean, I think you put it perfectly. The trust gap, might go ahead and pilfer that term from you.
Yeah, of course.
Forward,
of course.
When I talk about this subject, so thank you in advance. But what's really interesting about that, what you hit on early in your remarks there about people want to follow people versus companies, and they want to get to know the person. It sounds like that was a very deliberate, thought out strategy that you employed on LinkedIn, where you knew you were going to present yourself individually, you can present your face, and you were even, if I may go so far, and this is where I'd like you to jump in, even sharing some of yourself, personality-wise, et cetera, maybe some non-business stuff, also on LinkedIn. Was that part of the strategy too, to kind of like also build a bit of personal branding inside your LinkedIn strategy with what you were doing company-wise?
Yeah. So if you think about it, and at the same time I'm doing this, every company, when a founder, it doesn't matter what kind of company, we just happen to be a service company, we are the culture of the company we're starting, because we're the first employee, right?
Yeah.
And then I had hired bookkeepers, but they're not going to be the face of the company. They're not going to be marketing for me. They're bookkeepers. And it's you as the founder are the marketer. You're generally the first marketer. You're the first salesperson, everything. So you're the first representation of culture, both for your customer and your future employees. So,
yeah.
But the jump you then have to make is you've got to be transparent, in my opinion, and present yourself. And, on the product side, that you have the term product market fit. Everyone's trying to figure out product market fit. On the service side, I like calling it service market fit. Is the service I'm providing fit the market, fit the audience I'm trying to reach? And the only way I'm going to do that, one, is I have to get the audience in front of me, and I have to get them signed up for my service, and then I have to be willing to experiment. But then secondly, they're not only buying my service, they're buying the culture that comes with it now, because on a service business, you're dealing mostly with human beings. On a product business, you're dealing with culture, but you're ultimately buying that product, and you're going to decide, did the product taste good, smell good, feel good? Did it meet the needs of what I need the product to do? On a service side, you can't disconnect the service from the human beings that are serving you. It's impossible. So it really was deliberate for me to go, how do I make sure that everyone sees who I am, and that I represent the brand. But then at some point, I'm going to have to make the jump to where everybody they meet represents the brand at Reconciled, and therefore now Reconciled is who they're worried about. Because what you don't want as a service company is, I did not want them loyal to Michael. I did not want them thinking, oh, we're all gonna working with Michael. Michael's the only service provider. At the end of the day, if I want to scale this, I want them not working with me. Frankly, I don't even want them to eventually know who I am. At some point, most of my customers actually now at this point most of them don't even know who I am, other than, oh, he happens to own the company. But if I've scaled this enough, I'm not in the sales process anymore. I'm not in all these different processes. I've got a team of scale that are doing that. So, but it starts with you as the founder. You've got to present that, and the most authentic, the only person that can present what are you really building at the early stages is you as the founder. You can't really outsource that part. It's really hard, and unless you have co-founders, and one of the co-founders is the charismatic or the person that's going to represent that authentic brand for the brand. But then also means then I had an idea intentionally, and I think every founder has to have, is what is the culture you're trying to build? What are you trying to build? And I for me, it was, I've been in accounting most of my career. I wanted to build a place where I would want to show up excited to work every single day. Not, oh, I'm excited about just the service or product I'm selling, or the customer serving. I'm like, no, I'm excited about the workplace I'm building, because if this workplace is starting now and then at 10 employees, 20 employees, 100 employees, if I'm going to always be excited about it, that's the place I want to build. And so what is that? And that's where what I would begin defining really early on and presenting online, not just to potential customers, but potential employees as well.
So there's a tremendous amount of insight and wisdom there, Mike. I'm going to try to tease out two parts of it for our audience, if you bear with me. So on the first part, a lot of what you're describing, you're really hitting some very key points, like on marketing psychology and strategy and approach. Were these things purely self-taught as you just took the bumps and bruises of building the business? Were they something that you deliberately, like you were doing accounting and marketing, teaching yourself formal sort of marketing skills, if you want to put it that way, or some hybrid of those two things to sort of reach the point that you're at today?
So for me, I learned definitely by doing and making mistakes. So I did not go through, like, besides college marketing class, I didn't really go through any kind of sophisticated training around this. What was helpful for me was, before Reconciled, I had that solo fractional CFO practice, and so I had to sell. I had to go find customers and network, and I do tend to learn quickly after I make a mistake on what's working, what's not working, and how do I iterate to make it work better. And so, for example, for sales, first time doing sales was when I did the fractional CFO work. And one thing I learned on sales, and then when I started Reconciled, every customer that I would be able to get on a video call, one thing I learned about sales was, the less I talked and the more I got the customer to talk, the more likely they were going to sign the engagement letter. And so the best calls for me, sales calls for me, were I can get on a call. I don't say a single thing about myself. I just ask questions. I end the call with, is there anything you would like to learn about me or about Reconciled? And they say, no, we're going to sign, just send it. We don't care what the price is. And I go, wow. So I've done the whole call. I've literally not talked about what we did. They figured out what we did through all the questions I asked. Just through the questions I asked, they figured out, I can trust this guy. He cares about our business. He cares about our success. I don't really need to know anything else. Right? I don't need to know anything else. I'm going to sign whatever he sends over. That, when I was the key, was learning, wow, sales is not about me telling them about my service. Sales in the services end is getting the customer to believe you literally care about them the most, and will go to bat for them in whatever it is. You will figure it out. And so when I figured out that's the best way to fill the trust gap, is like, you're basically asking them, and you're one of the few people asking them questions that day about what they care, because they're just solving problems all day, and no one's asking them, well, how are you doing? What's keeping up at night? What about the finances suck? How can we help you solve that? Yeah. They don't need to know anything else about us. And so those were the best sales calls. And so I learned that quickly. The more and more I talked less, and the more and more I just asked questions. And that was super, super helpful. Yeah. And that's really how I learned. It's just like going through it. Yeah.
It's super interesting. So the second part I wanted to kind of tease out a little bit is, if you had one or two tips. I mean, you talked about the culture and instantiating, like, your values, the culture you wanted to form the company around, in other people inside the company, so they would carry that forward. When you were building that culture and you were looking for the people who would fit that culture, do you have, like, one or two tips or secrets, whatever you want to call them, that you could share with the audience who want to accomplish the same thing? Maybe they don't know quite how to go about doing that or where to start, that they could kind of keep in mind when they start that process.
Yeah, so there's a few thoughts to this. So the first thing is this: the trap every service provider can get into, and most do, is that they don't think about themselves starting a business. They think they're going to be the service provider, and that's the business. And if they do that, they will have created a job for themselves that they're trapped in, right? But they own the job, but they're trapped in it. And that's most professional services people. Like, I'm a lawyer, I start a law firm, and because I'm the best lawyer. I'm an accountant, I start an accounting firm because I'm the best accountant. And I've yet to meet an accountant who says, yeah, I'm not the best accountant for my customer. Every accountant believes they're the best accountant for their customer, which is impossible. That's an impossible statement because there's a bell curve in everything, and most accountants, therefore, are below average, and then there's some that are above average, and then there's some that are exceptional. So you cannot be the best accountant for your best service provider for your customer. You just happen to be a service provider, and you've prioritized that. So the trap one is, first off, are you building a business or are you building a job for yourself? You got to start there, right? And go, if you're building a job for yourself, okay, just get enough clients, you're full, you're done. You're not doing anything else, right? And then maybe you slowly go hire next person, you get them full, you're not doing anything else. If you're building a business, then the mentality is, who do I hire that can provide the service that represents the culture that I'm trying to build? So the service I'm providing aligns with the culture I'm trying to build. And so to do that, my early employees were individuals that, one, culturally fit and could work with me. And it was secondary or tertiary that they were amazing at accounting. It was actually the secondary third thing. My first hire was a former social worker who volunteered to do his church's books. He learned on his church's books. And I met him at church, right? And so when I said he wanted to learn accounting, I said, you should do the church's books. I'll teach you how to do it. And then if you really get serious about this, then you can come work for me. So then I hired him out of social work as my first bookkeeper. It's not like he had years of experience doing bookkeeping. It's that he was teachable. He had the drive. I could go out for a drink with him. I could tell like he wanted to learn from me. That was more important. And I could start on culturally having a match and then teaching him, here's how we're going to do the service. But it didn't matter that he was, years of accounting experience. Because otherwise, if I looked for somebody that was just like me, it'd be impossible. It'd just be impossible. I wouldn't probably be able to afford them. And secondly, I'd be going through tons of candidates looking for the perfect match. And the reality is, I already had plenty of, the 10,000 hours I already had done in my life in accounting. How often are you going to hire that same person? It's hard. And that's what most professional service people get trapped in. Instead of like, no, I'm going to build a business. I'm going to hire him early, and I'm going to be willing to let him make mistakes. And I did, and I let him, and I also let him learn through experience. And so those are really important lessons, I think, for me, that I helped, and hopefully helps your audience.
That's outstanding. Two superb tips there. I think we can echo and kind of reflect in other ways through our podcasts and our interviews and marketing and stuff like that. I mean, those are a great place to start. That I think anybody can understand and give their best attempt to reflect for their business. Very usable, very practical advice there. So appreciate that, Michael. We talked a little bit of strategy here. Let's maybe go back on the tactical side for a second. You mentioned that cold email outreach was a winner for you. Can you talk about how you came to try that? Did you have a sense that was going to be the best option to begin with? Were you just trying different things and that one seemed to hit? Any specific ways that you went about doing the cold email outreach that worked for you?
So I obviously had seen cold email working and being practiced by SaaS companies, by software companies, tech companies. Cold email outreach, social media outreach was a common practice, and it has been. But in accounting, it's not. It rarely had been. So in 2016, 17, I started exploring it, and then I basically found two different providers that did cold email outreach, and I split the country, east of the Mississippi, west of the Mississippi, and I said, okay, hey, you're going to do one side, you're going to do the other as two different email platforms, and A/B tested them, and then after 6 months, chose one of them to going forward is a company called Growbots, We were the first accounting firm to use their platform. Most of their customers, again, were software companies and tech companies. So we were the first accounting firm, and we basically had built Gold Email Outreach through them for years, and that was really, really helpful for us. And so really, it doesn't really matter whether it's GrowBots or whatever mix of cold email outreach you use. We liked GrowBots. It was an easy platform for us, easy to use, but I really took the playbook from SaaS companies.
Okay. Yeah, that's super interesting. And I mean, also interesting you employed a common general marketing tactic of splitting the test and seeing which one did better and stuff like that. So that was a really interesting and effective way for you to approach that that I think our audience can learn from as well. You know, you mentioned that in order to get somebody to work with you and turn over, as you said, the keys to the kingdom in some sense, they had to cover this. You had to cover this trust gap with them, which I would kind of describe maybe more on a figurative or an abstract side of the equation. But maybe if you could talk a little bit on the technical side, was there any challenges you had to traverse as you were handed somebody's business like that? Maybe from a security standpoint, like you did allude to security at one point. Anything technical that was also something you had to sort of overcome to bring those customers on board?
Yeah, so unique to accounting where we really literally are. It's not many services are getting financial keys to the business owner's kingdom. One, figuring out, well, how do we instruct our potential customers who could be at one of 8 to 10,000 banks or credit unions, right, doing banking? How do we instruct them in a standardized way to invite us as a user to their bank? There's no standard manual out there. So we had to literally learn through just doing it. Could we, in an onboarding call, walk through all the different unique interfaces of a customer to invite us? Because they'd never invited somebody to their bank account, right? That's pretty uncommon for a small business owner. They're generally the user on the account and maybe a spouse. But that's all set up by the bank at the time of sign up. How do they add a third party that could have view-only access, no wiring permissions, no payment permissions, download statement permissions, view-only access, right? How do you do that? And is their bank or credit union even capable of doing that? So and then a similar thing on the credit card side. How do they get reconciled as an accountant user with view-only credit card access, but don't issue us a physical credit card? And think of the thousands and thousands and thousands of credit card issuers across the universe, across the planet, that a small business could be using. Anywhere from the major players like Chase or Wells Fargo, all the way to the JetBlue card or the Macy's card, and is it even a business card? But they're using it for their business. So those were technical challenges, and probably the worst challenges is then having to scrub my own credit report to make sure that the cards business owners were using were not personal cards, and that I wasn't accidentally added as a personal guarantor on somebody else's credit card. So I actually scrub my own personal credit report every 3 to 6 months to make sure, because as a firm owner, I was going to take responsibility of being the named user, and there is no business user on most credit cards and bank accounts. You can't just assign reconciled as the user. It's someone's name. It's a KYC process of every bank and credit card. They have to know it's a real human being. So it's Michael Lee. So I'm this user, and how do we technically deal with that problem? And so that was a challenge that we had to figure out using different tools, different IT tools, and also just figuring out the onboarding process and user initiation process of all these different credit cards and bank accounts.
That's super insightful as far as where somebody might not expect to run into a challenge, but suddenly there's a roadblock there. Was that something that you figured that out early enough? It sounds like that you could anticipate an objection potentially where somebody's like, hey, I want to work with you, not sure how to work with you because of this issue, and you were able to just sort of solve that because of your the effort that you'd put into overcoming that obstacle. Was that something that became just something you were able to factor out immediately on your calls and stuff?
No, yeah, like once once you onboard your first few customers and you realize, wait, oh, we're dealing with the same problem. It's just a different bank and a different credit union, a different bank and credit union. It's not. You're not going to get in the beginning. Oh yeah, all your customers are with Chase or with Wells Fargo. It's not. It's not going to happen. Everyone's with different types of banks and credit unions. So that immediately was like, hey, we need to solve this problem because it's stalling onboarding, or it's potentially going to cause a retention issue if we can't make it clear. It's not our customer's job to go figure out how to make it easy for us to work with them. It's our job to figure out how to make it easy to work with us, right? That's our job. And if we make it hard, or the circumstances make it hard, we got to figure out solutions. And it could be calling the certain banks and saying, how do we work with you? We started in Vermont, so it was understanding all the banking systems of the Vermont banks and credit unions, and what kind of platforms were they using, and what is user permissioning like. And then as we slowly got customers in other states, learning the banks in their state. So those were all things we had to figure out and learn.
Gotcha. No, I mean, definitely fits the technical challenge category. I can just imagine how hard that was for you to just work through over time and stuff. So, Michael, just to finish up with something kind of fun, the Inc. 5000 experience that you had. I think from early October we saw the article, which included the video of kind of like the building the business on the fly, so to speak. Can you talk a little bit for our audience about, obviously some time had passed before you had an exposure of that nature. I think obviously if you recorded that in 2024, you were almost a decade into your business, but can you talk about like what that has done for your business? I know it's only been about a month or so since that was published, if I recall correctly. What the experience was like, how you came to it, what effects it's had on your business, the sort of reward, if you will, of doing it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so we made the Inc. 5000 list for the first time actually 3 years ago. So this was our third year on the list. And with the Inc. 5000 lists, it's, for those who don't know, it's the fastest growing privately held companies in the U.S. that self-report their financials to the Inc. magazine. So you have to go and report and apply, of course, and they have to validate through your tax returns or through a certified statement from CPA that the revenue and growth you're reporting is accurate. So that's the So is it the only 5,000? No, but it's the ones that I've reported, and it's to make that list is prestigious. It's got a good brand recognition, and so we made that list finally. And you have to have a certain minimum revenue, and then have reach a certain number of revenue over time because they measure it based on growth rate. And so that recording but what made the Inc. 5000 list was just such a huge reward, was such a huge honor, and then being able to go to the annual conference where they recognize the awardees was a huge honor, because then you got to meet fellow other founders who had fast-growing companies who really, really resonated with the same experiences you had as a founder building your business, and they're all in all different types of industries. So I've been to now 3 Inc. 5000 celebrations because of the 3 awards, and then they have different activities and different fun events, and also the ability to get in front of the Inc. magazine publishers and authors and editors and pitch stories and pitch not only your own stories but your customers' stories, your vendor stories, employee stories. So that exposure is priceless. It's been it's all earned media, as they call it. It's stuff that besides the application fee, you're not really paying for anything else. Other than attending the conference if you want to go, and then now I have the ability to be able to publish anytime I want on the Inc. magazine website. So that's all great exposure, and it's been really helpful for us to get exposure to fellow fast-growing founders across the U.S. and to really build up our brand recognition to align it with the Inc. brand.
So yeah, first off, congratulations doing that now 3 times over. That's definitely not only prestigious, as you said, it's just some inspiration, I think, too, for our audience to kind of aim for something like that and get to that point themselves. On that note, Michael, I wanted to close with one of my favorite authors, wrote the book The Black Swan, Nassim Taleb. He talked about entrepreneurs in one of his books as actually national heroes that he thought should actually have a day of recognition for the risk that they take, and for the many entrepreneurs who take those risks and nobody knows that they ever took them because they don't succeed. And obviously, you've more than cleared that bar. Is there any parting advice or singular tip, if you want to call it that, that you might pass on to an aspiring entrepreneur, somebody who wants to kind of replicate what you've done in your situation and built for yourself there?
Yeah, if you're wanting to build a real business, I would say that the top thing you could do is surround yourself with the best people as possible that you could find, right? Just find the best people possible and get out of the way. And that's what I've tried to do. Is I've got the best people I could find in this profession that are scattered throughout the U.S. and in South America as well. We have employees there, and that has been super helpful. And then having the humility to just step aside and let them run with this vision. Because if you're trying to build a big vision, you can't be the only one to do it. You have to have other people. And that's probably been the biggest lesson I've learned, is that the other people are as important as me. They're as important as me. I'm not the only, and I'm not the most important. It really is the other people, the people that represent and continue to build the culture and keep it going as reconciled.
That is an outstanding way, I think, for us to conclude this podcast episode. I cannot thank you enough, Michael. I think our audience is going to take a lot of both practical and just purely insightful advice and information from this episode. So really, thank you so much for joining us today, sharing Reconcile's journey, your journey, and I'm really excited to see the reaction people have to this episode. So with that, we're going to go ahead and conclude episode 2 of season 2 of the Pransform podcast. And once again, final thank you to Michael Lee for joining us today and sharing Reconcile's story with us. Thank you again, Michael.
Thank you so much.